Vasiliki, do you want to get started?
Yes, just a minute. A minute, please.
Yeah. Wise choice.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, just tell me if you don't hear me well. Okay, I'm starting then. Dear Professor Achilles Chaldeakis, Dean of the School of Philosophy of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, dear organizers of the conference, Tamsin Gilbert and Philip Kalantzis-Cope, dear members of the Common Ground Interdisciplinary Social Sciences Research Network, dear delegates, dear colleagues, students, and emerging scholars from various universities, dear friends, I am delighted to welcome you to the 17th International Conference on Interdisciplinary Social Sciences, which is being held in the School of Philosophy of the University of Athens. 2 years ago, at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the 15th International Conference was going to be held here. We had to do it digitally, which was then a big challenge for the entire academic world, as we were not used to expansive and intensive virtual communication yet. Common Ground has kept its promise, so now we are all here to have it in situ. Moreover, academics, among other sectors of society, are now quite used to virtual and blended events. Thus, although I feel unhappy about not being able to be with you at this opening due to being ill and confined at home, I feel very happy about being able to communicate with the help of technology and to welcome you all to this very rich Common Ground Conference on Interdisciplinary Social Sciences. I apologize for not being with you physically, for everybody's benefit, and also I apologize for my rough voice. It is wonderful to have so many experts and emerging scholars from different parts of the world presenting their research on the general themes and the special focus of this year's conference. We have amongst us scholars from Poland, Spain, the US, Latvia, Canada, South Africa, Thailand, Romania, Turkey, Malaysia, Mexico, the UK, Taiwan, Brazil, Israel, Australia, and Greece. Apologies if I have forgotten any country of academic origin. A large number of papers to be delivered conference, namely social and community studies, civic and political studies, cultural studies, global studies, environmental studies, organizational studies, educational studies, and communication. A rich panorama of topics examined from different disciplinary angles in dialogue with other disciplines is spread before us during the 3 days of the conference. These include important issues concerning our societies, such as migration, refugees, environmental catastrophes and climate change crisis, education, family and youth, public health, the pandemic, among other topics. Other aspects equally important in making us think about the world, such as trauma and memory, the production of knowledge, the supernatural, orality and narratives, are also included in this conference's repertoire. We look forward to learning from each other, from creative exchanges between our sciences, and of course, to forging relations and even friendships amongst us, leading to future academic cooperation. These conferences focus on heterodoxy in the social sciences, will be explored thoroughly through several plenary lectures, various papers, but also in the special events of this conference and in the special panel on interdisciplinary exchanges and new paradigms in the social sciences with a focus on Greece on the third day of the conference. We are going to attend lectures and participate in events which illustrate different approaches, old and new, heterodoxic ones, often not conforming to the prevailing view and ethos and seen as different from the normal, which have been emerging in the social sciences over recent times in response to environmental and to academic challenges. Keep this concept in mind as you visit the Welcomen Hostel in central Athens with Eugenia Arvanitis as part of the case study evening tomorrow. There, you will have the opportunity to talk to people working with refugee and migrant families on matters of education and public awareness, sustainable development, human rights, and homelessness, among other issues. Also, think of heterodoxy when you hear our three professional storytellers narrate folk tales from Greece, Ireland, Turkey, the UK, and America, in which the heterodoxic perspective prevails in the hero's thoughts and actions. This will be another special event before the closure of the conference. I would like to stress two distinctive aspects of this conference, for which I'm grateful. The first is the fact that it is being held in the School of Philosophy, which corresponds to the interdisciplinary emphasis of the conference and facilitates it. As our dean will also tell you, this school is the academic home of 13 departments: philology, history and archaeology, English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Russian and Slavic languages and literatures, psychology, music studies, theater studies, philosophy and education. Many of these departments serve the humanities, but their professors increasingly use methods and ideas from the social sciences and vice versa. The small sector of folklore studies, part of the Department of Philology, where I work, is such a case, being at the interstices between the humanities and the social sciences, a fact which I regard as a challenge, but also a plus. The second aspect of this conference, for which I'm grateful, is its emphasis on young and emerging scholars who present their research, but also become apprentices to the world of academic conferences by learning on the spot and by being involved in their organization. Some of my postgraduate and doctoral students may be anxious, but I'm sure they will do well and they will be grateful for the initiation. It is only fitting to end this message with sincere and warm thanks to all the people who have contributed to its successful organization so far and who will contribute to its running. First, I would like to thank warmly our host, the Dean of the School of Philosophy. Excuse me, please. Excuse me for this interruption. First, I would like to thank warmly our host, the Dean of the School of Philosophy, Professor Achilleas Chaldeakis, without whose help and support we would not have been able to prepare the auditorium, the rooms, and some other important infrastructure for the conference in time for it to take place. The staff of the school, administrators, technicians, guards, caretakers, and cleaners have all helped to make things work and will continue doing so. The organizers of the conference, Philip and Kamsi of Common Ground, and the members of the research network of the social sciences who have assisted in the preparation of the program. The conference secretary, Tatiana Portnova, whose administrative efficiency has ensured the smooth running of things. My colleagues and co-chairs in the conference, Associate Professor Eugenia Arvanitis, who has organized a very rich and insightful case study event in which social inclusion, empowerment, and intercultural mediation will be discussed. Assistant Professor Georgios Kouzas, who has helped in many practical matters by being the supervisor of this enormous building, but is also contributing to the special panel discussion. A big thank you to our plenary speakers and to the members of the special panel on interdisciplinary exchanges and new paradigms in the social sciences with a focus on Greece. Your names are on the conference side and will also be mentioned in my message on the side. With their lectures and contributions, they will provide food for thought and illustrate different aspects of this conference. I am most grateful to Maria Konstanti, Georgia Haikali, and Taxiarchis Peligiannis, our three professional storytellers, for the wonderful special storytelling event they have prepared for us. I must also thank warmly the team of the emerging scholars, and especially doctoral candidate Joachim Karepidis, who has been and will be extremely valuable with practical and technical issues in this conference, both during its preparation and now during its running. Last but not least, I would like to thank you all for being part of this conference and for your interesting contributions to it. I hope that you will enjoy a healthy, happy, and creative stay in Greece, and I hope to see you again in the Common Ground conferences in different parts of the world. Thank you very much. And now, please allow me to invite Professor Chaldeakis, the Dean of our School of Philosophy, to give his greeting to you, if he's there. Thank you.
Αγαπητές και αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι, κυρίες και κύριοι, φίλες και φίλοι. Αποτελεί μεγάλη χαρά και ιδιαίτερη τιμή για τη Φιλοσοφική Σχολή η διεξαγωγή στους χώρους της κατά αυτή την περίοδο από την 21η έως την 23η του μηνός Ιουλίου του έτους 2022, η διεξαγωγή στους χώρους της, επαναλαμβάνω, του 17ου Διεθνούς Διεπιστημονικού Συνεδρίου Κοινωνικών Επιστημών του Οργανισμού Common Ground.
Being here to welcome you all to the 17th International Conference, and he will extend a great welcome to all of the delegates.
Μάλιστα, είναι η δεύτερη φορά που η σχολή μας φιλοξενεί το συνέδριο αυτό, όπως είχε συμβεί και το έτος 2020 με το 16ο Διεθνές Διεπιστημονικό Συνέδριο Κοινωνικών Επιστημών του Οργανισμού Common Ground, που είχε τότε, λόγω της πανδημίας, διεξαχθεί αποκλειστικά εξ αποστάσεως.
And this is the second time that our university organizes the Common Ground Conference on Social Sciences. That was in 2020, but at that time we had only online proceedings.
Φέτος, και πάλι λόγω της πανδημίας, στο συνέδριο μπορεί κανείς να συμμετάσχει είτε με φυσική παρουσία, είτε εξ αποστάσεως, μέσω του διαδικτύου.
This year, in 2022, due to the pandemic circumstances, we have a dual sort of mode of participation, either face-to-face and distance.
Το 17ο Διεθνές Συνέδριο αποτελεί μια ετήσια δραστηριότητα του Interdisciplinary Social Sciences Research Network, το οποίο ιδρύθηκε το 2006 από τον μη κερδοσκοπικό επιστημονικό οργανισμό Common Ground, με στόχο τη δημιουργία ενός διεθνούς διεπιστημονικού δικτύου που συνδέει τις κοινωνικές και ανθρωπιστικές επιστήμες μεταξύ τους, αλλά και με τις φυσικές και εφαρμοσμένες επιστήμες, στέμνοντας τα γεωγραφικά, πολιτισμικά και επιστημονικά σύνορα που τις διευκρίνουν.
The 17th Circumstances Conference is an annual activity by the network, the Circumstances Network, and it brings, it crosses the boundaries between the geographical, cultural, and other boundaries, and it brings all this interdisciplinary action in order to form a vibrant network of researchers and academics.
Το συνέδριο φιλοξενεί επιστημονικές ανακοινώσεις στα πεδία των κοινωνικών μελετών και των μελετών για την κοινότητα, των πολιτικών και πολιτιακών μελετών, των πολιτισμικών μελετών, των περιβαλλοντικών μελετών, των οργανωτικών μελετών, των παιδαγωγικών μελετών και της επικοινωνίας.
This conference welcomes presentations from a variety of disciplines such as the social sciences, the political sciences, cultural studies, organizational studies, pedagogy and education, and this is for the vibrant community network.
Η ιδιαίτερη έμφαση του φετινού συνεδρίου δίνεται στις έννοιες του ετερόδοξου και του διαφορετικού. Εμφανής είναι αυτή η διαφοροποίηση σε σχέση με το παρελθόν και στον τίτλο του συνεδρίου, στα σταυροδρόμια των επιστημονικών παραδειγμάτων, η ετεροδοξία στις κοινωνικές επιστήμες. Πέρα των ανακοινώσεων και των διαλέξεων που απευθύνονται στην ολομέλεια των συμμετεχόντων, ιδιαίτερα ενδιαφέρον παρουσιάζει το ειδικό πάνελ με θέμα Interdisciplinary Exchanges and New Paradigms in the Social Sciences, Focus on Greece, στο οποίο επιστήμονες από διαφορετικά επιστημονικά πεδία προσεγγίζουν διεπιστημονικά νέα παραδείγματα στις κοινωνικές και ανθρωπιστικές επιστήμες στην Ελλάδα και διεθνώς. Σε αυτό το πάνελ συμμετέχουν 3 μέλη της σχολής μας. Η καθηγήτρια Φιλία Ίσαρη, η αναπληρώτρια καθηγήτρια Βασιλική Χρυσανθοπούλου και ο επίκουρος καθηγητής αστικής λογογραφίας Γιώργος Κούζας. Ενώ και σε άλλη συνεδρία θα μιλήσει ο επίσης αγαπητός συνάδελφος καθηγητής Δημήτρης Δρόσος. Είναι τέλος θετικό και ένα άλλο βασικό χαρακτηριστικό του συνεδρίου. Οι συμμετέχοντες στο συνέδριο συμμετέχουν συγχρόνως και στο επιστημονικό δίκτυο Interdisciplinary Social Sciences Research Network και μπορούν να αποστέλουν τις ανακοινώσεις τους προς δημοσίευση στα επιστημονικά περιοδικά του Common Ground για τις κοινωνικές επιστήμες. Ενθαρρύνονται έτσι κατά αυτόν τον τρόπο ιδιαίτερα οι νέοι και εκολαπτώμενοι επιστήμονες να συμμετάσχουν στο συνέδριο και στο ερευνητικό δίκτυο των κοινωνικών επιστημών του Common Ground.
This way, the new academics, new career experts are encouraged to participate in certain network and that comes to first.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, it is a great pleasure to be all together here at the School of Philosophy of the National Methodistan University of Athens. I would like to take this opportunity and welcome you all here in our city, Athens, in our country, Greece, in our school, the School of Philosophy. We look forward to welcoming you to our international conference in the hospitable surroundings of the School of Philosophy, the National Methodistan University of Athens. Together, we will pursue creative discussions on innovative paradigms and interdisciplinary exchanges in the social sciences. I would like to wish great success to this conference. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. One of the things that I do want to make clear from the outset is that we have two research networks here and two conferences that are in symbiosis, in symbiotic conversation. We have our interdisciplinary social sciences research network and our global studies research network, which the last 3 or so years we have put into conversation together. We've put them into conversation together in part because of the luck of two people who are in conversation together. And so what I'm going to now do is introduce our global studies research network chair to the stage, Rafael Soborowski, who will talk to us about the global studies theme this year, and then our interdisciplinary social sciences research network chair.
Thank you, Phil. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I think the last time we met in person was in 2019 in Krakow, and then 2 later editions of the conference were online. And now we are delighted to be able to bring to you this blended format. If there is anything that emerged positive, that emerged out of the pandemic, it's probably the speed with which we refined and embraced those methods of communication, allowing us to be here in place and for other participants to join online. The theme of the Global Studies Conference, which I think works very well together with the theme of the Social Science Conference, is what to make of crises, emerging methods, principles, and actions. And if I remember correctly, when we were putting together this theme, we had one crisis in mind in particular, namely the 2008 financial crisis and its long-term consequences, and those were felt especially in an especially brutal and protracted way in Greece. And then, of course, we also had the COVID-19 pandemic crisis in mind as well, which destabilized our lives on so many levels. While this latter crisis is largely being tamed at this point in time, I mean, depending where you look, but we are in a better place than we were some time ago, there is, of course, a new calamity that we are facing, namely the war in Ukraine, with all its implications for Ukraine, but also for the whole world, including destabilization of global food supply chains, causing famines in poor countries, and the energy crisis destabilizing even the wealthiest locations. In other words, it's difficult to be optimistic. Optimism is an increasingly scarce resource. But we want to put an emphasis on this positive aspect of our theme, what to do in this context, what are the ways out of these multiple crises. And I think this connects very well with the social science theme, because we want to really get out of the mess we are in without looking at these heterodox ways of thinking and acting. All right, so we have to treat this crisis as as an opportunity to look for new ways. And there is probably no better place to start than this platform, namely the conference or two conferences, the journals that we have, and the network for this community of scholars. I am truly impressed with the breadth and diversity of papers that will be presented in the next 3 days. And they include very important topics. Some papers consider the reactions to the pandemic and the best responses to the pandemic. Others focus on the problems associated with the populist wave, with rising nationalisms, with all kinds of oppression, be it sexism, classism, racism. There are papers that focus on the global rebalancing and the decline of the US hegemony and the rise of China and what it means for the global community. There are papers on social movements and how we can rely on them, to what extent we can rely on them to pursue change. In other words, a great diversity of papers for a conference in the field, which is by definition diverse. I mean, we highlight interdisciplinary in the case of social sciences, and global studies is by definition an interdisciplinary field bringing together sociology, political science, and many other disciplines. So I would like to thank everyone who made this conference possible. Most importantly, our hosts at the University of Athens, the fantastic team at Common Ground, but our plenary speakers, but most importantly, all the participants, because you are the reason we are here. So thank you very much and have an enjoyable conference. Thanks a lot.
I now welcome up to the stage our Interdisciplinary Social Science Research Network Chair, Marcin Galant.
Thank you, Phil. Very good morning to everybody. My name is Marcin Galant, and I'm co-chair of the Interdisciplinary Social Sciences Research Network. I am a sociologist. I work in the Institute of European Studies at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, in Poland. It is a great honor, privilege, and pleasure to welcome everybody here in person and everybody in front of the computers, monitors, screens, etc. It is a great and optimistic event. The fact that we have managed to come here to Athens is something what makes me very, very thrilled. Let me say something personal. I just can't help myself. The very first book I read was the Greek mythology, and my first intellectual hero was Socrates. And since I'm partly responsible for the theme about heterodoxy, I have to pay a tribute to Socrates, because I think that he's the most important and the greatest heterodox intellectual and thinker of times. And I was thinking very long yesterday, and I couldn't fall asleep very long, and I was trying to figure out what was so powerful about Socrates. And I think there are many issues, and but I think his genius consisted in ability to question the world, question knowledge, to ask questions, simple and profound questions who startled people and made them speechless. So I don't know if we find all proper solutions and answers to all crises we are facing today, but I do believe that we will have a time of 3 days of time to ask challenging questions, to ask about new ideas, new ways of heterodox thinking, and I wish everybody to bring as much as possible of this art of questioning the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I've thanked our hosts, our wonderful hosts. It's not been a 2-year conversation. We have been collaborating with the University of Athens for nearly 20 years now, and it always feels like a homecoming every time we come back. Another group of people who I really want to thank are our Emerging Scholar awardees this year. Firstly, I want to recognize them. I'm going to pre-thank them, but I'm going to recognize them. Could our awardees please stand up? Don't be shy. We'll give them a round of applause. This program is very important to us. It's important to put emerging scholars at the front of the room, making sure that their voices are heard, but also making sure that they're guiding conversations. We force them in the middle of your ideas, and it's a really wonderful opportunity and a great program, and we thank them for all that we do. I also want to take the chance, while I've got you all together, to thank you. You know, we all have to pause for a moment and think about the weight of what these years have been, from the regulatory, health, the existential context that we've all come through. And it's a brave thing to be out in the world again. Don't think it's not brave. Don't think it's not hard work. And we all appreciate you being here, and everyone else who's here appreciates your presence and the commitment to being here. So can you give yourself a round of applause? I'm not going to talk too long, but one of the things I just want to let you know is what we've been doing for the last 2 years at Common Ground Research Networks. When the pandemic came, when it hit, when we saw it coming, I'm sure we all saw the same thing. Everyone was building these temporary shelters. They were building a shack on the side of a restaurant. They were, you know, doing something just to eke away through what they thought would be a period, and then life goes back. We didn't do that. We used this opportunity to really think deeply but quickly about what were the kinds of blockages in scholarly communication that pre-existed, you know, the same things that we saw within the world. All these divisions that were always there became clearer. Those points of access, those inequalities were exaggerated or made extreme during this COVID period. And that's the same for scholarly communication. You know, points of access were always complicated. You know, can I afford? Where is it? How do I participate? And so what we did is that with our software team, we have a research lab that's based in the University of Illinois Research Park, and we went and we built this event application in the CG Scholar platform. We tried to build something for a blended future that wasn't in the short term, but something that could go forward. And one of the things that we've done, just so you know, is that every presenter here, why we forced you into this app is to make sure that you engage and see the content that is in this web space. But every presenter is given a presentation page, whether you're online or in person. We encourage you to add digital content to that page. All the content is asynchronous. We have tried to, we have these keynotes as live, but one of those barriers of exclusion is time zone, something that I didn't realize until we were in it. You know, can I Zoom at this time? Can I talk at this time? And so what we have done is all of the online content is in that application, but we also encourage you to upload your a video of your presentation, PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be today, but before the conference ends. And then what this is, it's a time capsule of what these 2-3 days were. Something that you can return to, not just during the conference, but after. So that blended approach is something that will be a continuing legacy of this research network. The other thing that we are is we're also a bilingual research network. And so I'm going to introduce to the stage my colleague and scientific director of Commonwealth España, José Luis Ortega Martín from the University of Granada.
Thank you, Philip. Bien, en este caso utilizaré nuestra lengua común, que es la que nos trae hoy por aquí. Agradecer, por supuesto, que estéis aquí todos. Seré breve, estoy siempre a vuestra disposición durante los 3 días del Congreso. En el orden de participación, ya habéis visto que ha estado en primer lugar Aquileas, el decano de la facultad, Aquileas Calvayaki. Que son presenciales y hay otras que son online. En la parte presencial, pues digamos que tenemos en total hay 300 presentaciones, de las cuales puede haber mitad y mitad en español y en inglés. Es un lujo, hay 36 países diferentes participando en esta conferencia. En nuestro caso, pues tenemos participantes de Colombia, de México, de España, de Ecuador, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Brasil. Y es la verdad que es todo un honor poder contar con vosotros por aquí y que tengamos ese huequecito también para poder participar y compartir en español. En la parte de Global Studies tienen 80 delegados de 15 países diferentes. Soy ya breve, bueno, hablaban de las últimas conferencias que hubo un poco antes de la pandemia. Hablaban los colegas de Rafael y Marcin, hablaban sobre esas conferencias que hubo antes de la pandemia, en 2019. El tema de la crisis ha sido algo que también han estado hablando en el apartado de Global Studies. Y los agradecimientos, que yo creo que ya podía, son obvios, efectivamente, los agradecimientos para la universidad que nos acoge hoy. Siendo, como decía el colega, siendo optimistas, ¿no? O sea, planteándonos, hablaba de Sócrates y de esas cuestiones con las que se planteaba y decía que de bueno tenían tantos Sócrates. Que seamos optimistas, que aportemos soluciones también y por supuesto las aportemos desde nuestra parte en español, ¿no? Se ha agradecido también a los Emerging Scholars que tenemos también en español y también en inglés. Y bueno, pues para terminar eso, que intentamos que sea un congreso, y lo hemos conseguido, ya llevamos mucho tiempo y muchos congresos, que sea bilingüe en todo lo posible. Tenemos plenarias que son exclusivamente en español y tenemos plenarias que son exclusivamente en inglés también. Entonces, ahí sí os pido las que son en inglés porque tengamos un poco de paciencia, de confianza, un poco más, y luego que asistamos a todas las que tenemos en español. ¿De acuerdo? Pues, well, thank you all. I'm sorry for all these long speaks in Spanish. And, well, thank you. Muchas gracias a todos.
Okay, before I hand back to Marcin to introduce our plenary speaker this morning, I have notes on notes on notes. I want to make sure you have all the logistical information going forward. I'm going to say briefly, Tamsin can remind me if I got it wrong. All rooms and lunches will be on the 8th floor. That's correct. Good. First thing, we have a wonderful reception this evening at after the last session on the 8th floor. There is a few spots for the conference dinner. It's an amazing venue. If you've not booked now or you're interested, please come and talk to Tamsin at the front desk. I'd also like to remind you that access to all the programs, you will see a sign like this. Your badge will have your program. If you're social sciences, you can toggle back and forth between English and Spanish, but don't forget there is the Global Studies program as well, which we have assigned to access that. So you make sure you see all of that content there as well. And with that, I'll hand over to Marcel.
Thank you, Phil. It is time for our first plenary speaker. This is Dr. Maciej Grodzicki, an economist from the Jagiellonian University in Kraków in Poland. Maciej Grodzicki specializes in the contemporary international inequalities, industrial policies, development and global value chains in the evolutionary and neo-Kaleckian school of economic thought. Currently, he is also involved in the Marxist ecological economics, investigating the political economy of commons, forestry, and degrowth. I will add that Dr. Maciej Grodzicki is also a kind of public intellectual, very well known in Poland, often seen and heard on different TV channels and radio stations. His talk will also take into consideration our settings in Athens and Greece. The speech is titled "In Search of a New Daedalus, Heterodox Economics as a Radical and Realistic Approach to Global Contradictions." Maciej, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everyone. Really honored to have this speech. I'm a bit stressed at the moment, to be honest. So yeah, let's start because I think we are a bit over the time. Yeah, so we live in the age of fire, both metaphorically, times of war, pandemic, famine, migrations, but also very, very physically. So these are the pictures from just 2 days ago. On a few kilometers away, we have this blazing fires. And actually, it seems like like the aggravated contradictions in the global economy that aggravated over the decades are at the moment erupting. I will just focus in my speech on one of these contradictions related to the scale of global economy. At the moment, actually, as you see in this picture, we consume and produce more than our Earth can sustain. Actually, we produce like we would have over nearly 2 Earths. And in a week time, in 28th of July, we start consuming more than our Earth can contain. In a more scientific framework of so-called planetary boundaries, there are 9 key global processes identified by the Earth system scientists. And as you see in this picture, in some areas, we are already in the very risky zone. The ones related, for instance, to biochemical flows, of course, climate change, but also biodiversity or deforestation. So the scale of our production and economy is too large, and it starts to become a huge threat for the stability of Earth systems. And I think these challenges or threats are widely recognized by the contemporary societies. It's recognized that we do not need change in the system. We do not have to follow business as usual, but rather we need a profound systemic change. Also, many sciences call for this systemic change rather than reformist or business as usual approaches. And I come here as an economist. Economics is a peculiar role here in this setting, because economists are scientists as well. And well, some of them identify as social scientists, some of them feel they are closer to physics or mathematics perhaps. But economists are also policy advisors or policy makers, so they change the world they try to describe, and they are heavily involved in these global processes. Also, economists are often perceived as keepers of some secret knowledge, or even priests of a religion or a mythology. And some of them, they boast to be experts in almost everything, and try to approach their universal rational agent method to almost any problem of the humanity. However, despite this own influence, they often fail to meet their challenge. And for instance, in this UK British trust survey, economists are almost at the bottom of social trust, close to the politicians. So it tells a lot about the shape of our faculty. Other scientists and historians are close to the top of the trust. So the aim of my speech today is to answer a question: can economics be helpful to solve these global contradictions, in particular related to ecological and climate crisis? And I will try to learn some lessons, how economics as science detached from reality, and how can it change. My thesis is that, yes, we need heterodoxy, but rather we do not need a new orthodoxy. My case study is related to economic growth and planetary boundaries, and I myself, I am personally a bit of a convert. I was trained in mainstream orthodox economics, and then in time I turned heterodox. So I have a bit of perspectives from both sides of the debate. So the key theme is the economic growth, and I believe we have people from different disciplines here. So a bit of short introduction. What is economic growth? So it is basically a process of expansion of GDP. So of the total flow of output, the output in the monetary part of the economy. So it means basically that every year we produce more and more. And as many growth processes, in principle, it can have exponential character. Like in this so-called hockey stick picture on the right-hand side, where you see that GDP in many countries, especially in the global north, was almost stable throughout the history, and then interrupted and is growing exponentially in the last 2 to 3 centuries. Economic growth is a recent phenomenon. Also, it is quite rare. It relates only to some parts of the global economy, and it's very unequal. It is based on capitalist institutions and, in principle, technologies of energy from fossil fuels. What's important is that economic growth does not translate automatically into social needs or quality of life. The fact that we produce more, that does not mean that we are more satisfied. So there are nowadays 2 contradictory narratives. One of the mainstream economics, NE, so growth as the only ultimate road to development, whereas the other, promoted by numerous heterodox scholars, is that we are rather addicted to growth. It is rather like a better drug than a medicine. Because one of the downsides of economic growth is that we utilize more and more natural resources, and we have more and more pressure on the biosphere. These pictures may not look well visible for you, but in principle they demonstrate in usage, global usage, for instance, of metals, of plastics, of water, of fossil fuels in a global economy in the last 2 centuries. As you see, they are close to parallel with the GDP line. However, what other disciplines, not economics, but like biology, physics, engineering, also technology sciences, they tell us that we have some boundaries to material production. This GDP growth cannot go infinitely. So, for instance, we have thermodynamic limits of the Earth system, where more production uses more energy and generates more heat and entropy. Also, we have the aforementioned already planetary boundaries, so that our Earth cannot contain more waste and also cannot provide more resources. We see already that many key resources are increasingly depleted and are really in low availability. What's more, we are at the moment in a particular lock-in in our industrial systems based on fossil fuels. Over the centuries we generated, we produced as societies, as social classes, we produced huge production systems, huge infrastructures, huge machines and factories, which are based on a particular way of producing, based on fossil fuels. It's not like we can now change it in 10, 20 years to another way of doing things. It's not like we can achieve a very abrupt radical technical change. So the time scales are key here. We have planetary challenges, and all the climate scientists tell us that we have 10, maybe 15 years to change, and we do not have this time to change our economy, to maintain growth. So, for instance, to give you a case, is the resource depletion. Many resources key in global manufacturing production are now depleted, starting from sand, necessary to produce concrete and glass, which is in global shortage, but also fossil fuels, gas, oil, and many others. For instance, this graph from Simon Michaud, the geologist, shows us the declining quality and availability of ores of key metals like copper, lead, zinc, and gold, and so on. So in a way, we are facing this limits to growth, which will come very, very promptly. And first takeaway from this introduction is that economic growth on a global scale cannot go on, but also that it must not go on due to biophysical boundaries. And now let's see what economics, or this mainstream economics, thinks about it. So mainstream economics is like the Icarus. It would like to grow forever. It has infinite ambitions, but also infinite prescriptions, recommendations, solutions to the challenges. I put it in basics, right? Because obviously science is a bit more complex than here, but in principle, we have this message: growth is possible. Also, green growth is possible, the one which is decoupled from pressure on environment, and also we see that growth is good. So we need more growth. Even we need more growth to, for instance, to solve this contradiction. We need more GDP growth to solve inequalities, to solve hunger, and so on. We hear this message all the time. Examples. Let's start with the Nobel Prize winner, William Nordhaus, from I think 3 years ago. His famous DICE modeling of the integrated climate and economy models recommended that actually the optimal way of managing global economy is to heat global atmosphere by over 4 Celsius degrees. This would be the optimal path, the one which would be the most beneficial for global economy according to the Nobel Prize winners. Well, actually, in the 4, it is needless to say, I think, in this community here, that in 4 degrees there will be maybe not no life, but no human civilization as we know it anymore. And there are more. And there are more examples. Actually, this type of modeling is very influential also for the IPCC reports. It's embedded in this green growth narrative that growth can be green, the growth can be decoupled, so-called, from pressure and emission of carbon dioxide. It is visible in, for instance, European Green Deal strategy, which is basically based on electrification and producing even more, for instance, electric vehicles. It is still the basics of teaching of new economic models, so-called Econ 101 course. So mainstream economics is at a huge denial. It cannot accept its limits to growth. And I will spend a couple of minutes to see why mainstream economics denies the limits to growth. What is the reason for such absurd statements at times? And first, these are the theoretical and methodological reasons. So we come to the structure of science. Oh, I don't know if you see properly this comic, and the guy lost his wallet, is looking for it under the lantern, the street lantern, and comes and asks, why is it here that you lost this wallet? No, I lost it elsewhere, but here is the light. And this is the thing with mainstream economics. It puts certain boundaries to its thinking, very abstract boundaries, like humans are perfectly rational, people are individualistic, we can abstract from material and energy basis of the production. And with these boundaries, we can go elsewhere, we can go to another reality and think, for instance, about infinite growth. In this abstract reality, it may work because we have no physical limits to growth, we have no social economic limits to growth. Also because markets are assumed to be the perfect, efficient allocation mechanisms, so-called general equilibrium framework, it seems that every growth is good. Because we grow, well, we grow because we want it, assuming to be mainstream economics. So, to show you a basic framework of economic modeling, this is the basis, the circular flow. We have firms, we have households, there are some payments, some goods and services, flows of labor and capital. There is no air, there is no energy, there is no matter here. This is just an abstract monetary framework, right? And this is the basis of contemporary growth modeling, where we have just simple function. Y is the product, which is a function of capital and labor. Capital and labor being like abstract units without need of energy, without need of matter, without any pressure of the environment. Also, there are some further methodological limitations. When you look closely to the mainstream economics, which is like a huge science, we have thousands of brilliant people over there, thousands of really devoted, often very, very ambitious, and even working for the ambition of working for the humanity people. However, when you look in the structure of science, there are many fallacies. And for instance, falsification. Mainstream economics, well, has this ambition to be a positivist science. But when you look at the structure of falsification, it doesn't work at all. Many models are falsified, do not fit to the reality, but they are still maintained. There are numerous ad hoc assumptions. And for instance, this so-called decoupling. Decoupling has been falsified empirically numerous times. When you look at huge meta-analyses, I put for you 3 of them here, 3 meta-analyses about the relation between GDP growth and pressure on production, pressure on environment in terms of CO2 emissions or material use. All of them agree that we cannot decouple production from material use. We cannot decouple quickly or fastly and fully production from CO2 emissions. That is the way production is organized. Where we want to achieve IPCC targets, we just need to start producing less. And even despite this decoupling is still maintained in many mainstream models. And now the second aspect, coming to the not the theory, but rather the sociology and politics of science itself. So how the science works as a community of scientists. When we look into this, we see that in mainstream economics, growth is a key pillar of its hegemony. When we put growth out of mainstream economics, its message collapses. It seems that we do not have any more justifications for markets or private capital, because if growth collapses, we need to find other ways of solving things, other ways of providing to the people than just GDP growth. So the whole framework is collapsing. Also, growth modeling, for instance, for many young scholars is the only possible way for academic career. And many of the economists, especially the top one, are very highly politically entangled. So they promote growth because it's profitable for them. And when we look, for instance, at the green growth, in practice, it turns out as a way of earning by capital on partial transition. And it's very similar. Perhaps many of you know the debates about sustainable development. It's a mistaken strategy for the global south. Green growth is its parallel as a mistaken strategy for the global north. So the takeaway too is that mainstream economics is structurally locked into this growth orientation. And just as Icarus burned himself, it seems like mainstream economics would rather see the world burning than abandon some of its assumptions. So we need to abandon it before they burn the world. So what we need is we need Daedalus instead of Icarus. So the key questions today is how to abandon growth, how to prosper without growth. To answer these questions, we need economics, right? But fit for purpose, productive to solve sustainability transitions, like Inga Rebica wrote in her great paper 2 years ago. The economics we need should be realistic, even radically realistic, telling us the hard truth, yet also theoretically grounded. It should be engaged, it should be helpful, useful, but also critical of the reality and also autonomous. It should be very ambitious, yet also self-critical and humble, yes. And I would argue, so in particular, we need economics that will be able to explain interrelations between monetary, biophysical, and social elements that would analyze collective and systemic features that will move beyond efficiency towards also questions of distribution of income and scale of production, that would capture political aspects like power, inequalities, institutions, conflicts, that will be emotion, that will capture dynamics, that will start with the precautionary principle. We cannot take the huge risks of going into the climate catastrophe. That would highlight implementation challenges, will focus on deep transformation instead of shallow change, and it will envision future alternatives instead of simply critiquing what is at the moment. And I argue that some elements in the so-called heterodox economics are fit for this purpose. And ecological economics is part of this heterodox framework. So what is heterodox economics basically? So I put for you the 6 elements of 6 pillars. So we have different schools there. They are critical of mainstream, but they are plural themselves. They are liberalistic. They focus on also critical view of capitalism. They are often interdisciplinary, working together with other disciplines of social and other sciences as well. But also they are politically engaged. Politically engaged in a explicit manner, not in a hidden one. So heterodox economics often do not have this ambition of being only a positive science. And we had this vision, very simple vision of economy, which I showed you before, circular flow. What is the vision of economy in heterodox economics. There is this nice quote by Todorova that economics should be a study of social provisioning process, covering different range of activities, market, non-market, paid and unpaid. So we have this so-called layer cake vision, where we have different layers in the provisioning system. Mother Nature, so-called love economy, so all the activities which we do because we care about others, we care about nature, we care about our close relatives. Then we have the monetized economy. There is private sector, but also public sector and grey economy. And yet another vision from ecological economists now. Yeah. This is the circular flow, which is much more realistic. As you see, there are many more arrows here interrelated with nature, with sun energy. We have energy from sun, we have different sources of energy, we have materials, we interact with plants and animals, and then we have some waste. So as you see, this is much more complex vision than simple circular flow. And the question of growth, coming back for a moment, growth has been a key element of heterodox schools as well. But as you see, this view is much more ambiguous than the growth is good or we need growth narrative of mainstream. So for instance, post-Keynesians perceive growth as incidental, unstable and unequal. Evolutionary economists look at the technical change in complex systems. Marxists perceive growth as a reflection of capital accumulation, often very unequal on a global scale. Feminist economists perceive growth as expropriation, expansion of monetary sphere, often at cost of the care economy. And ecological economists often perceive growth as simply destruction, as non-economic growth, actually. Like in this quote by Jason Hickel, a more holistic way of thinking about growth is to recognize it is broadly equivalent to the rate at which our economy is metabolizing the living world. Past a certain point, it becomes extremely destructive. Word growth describes now what has become a process of breakdown. Another category, so-called degrowth, is now emerging as a spanning concept. And there is huge discussion. It's not like degrowth is the only goal. There is huge discussion whether we can attain it, how to do it. Degrowth is a planned reduction of energy and resource. Planned one, designed to bring economy back to the balance with the living world in a way that reduces inequality and improves human well-being. And different schools take their accounts, whether it's possible, whether we can have innovations without growth. What political transitions do we need to achieve growth? How can we appreciate reproductive labor and earth care? And how can we adjust the systems of provisioning to planetary boundaries? I will just show you maybe two examples of this thinking about growth and degrowth. Maybe one from feminist economics. They take a look at what escapes conventional growth accounts. And Stefania Barka, I recommend this book, it's an amazing one about forces of reproduction. She writes about care work, but also so-called earth care, a specific kind of caring work where people and their communities care about the land when they live, the forest, the animals, the plants, they nurture it, they garden, they work with the animals and so on. This is also a work, this provides goods and services, but it's not included into growth account. It does not lead to GDP. It's not profitable. It's not productive, perhaps, in a conventional sense. Second case, so-called social system of provision approach from ecological economics, where teams from Leeds, also I recommend this website for you, I cooperate with them as well. They, for instance, analyze whether it is really possible to reduce energy and material use in a way that is maintaining social needs as well. And like you see in this figure, we we have different scenarios from IPCC and International Energy Agency reports, but also these little arrows down there, they demonstrate that we could reduce current energy use by 3 times even, maintaining social needs for all the people in the world. So it's really possible, but we need to reorganize our system. So the third takeaway, coming to the end, is that the data which we look for, they are already there, but we just need to let them work. So it's time for a term in economics, but a wise one, like in this metaphor from mass industrial agriculture, permaculture, different pluralist one way of doing science. And finally, what were the lessons I took when I was preparing the speech? Is that we do not need more or new ivory towers. It's not enough to destroy the old ones, but we shouldn't build new ones. We need economics which is the data style. It is wise, helpful, ambitious, radical, yet also realistic and humble. It doesn't want to burn itself on the way to achieving its goal. And it is already there in the pluralist schools of heterodox economics. However, when I think of it, it is still the Icarus who takes all the flesh, all the publicity, good and bad. So what we need, well, we need to do our job, of course, but also aim for strength. Be ambitious, go to the social movements, go to the communities, go to the politicians, to work with them. But also economists should nurture pluralism. They should not build new orthodoxy. The pluralism is the power of heterodox economics, actually. It's the vibrant fruit of power. And we should control quality. We should remember about our scientific virtues. Finally, perhaps we should build new structures in the academia, but also we should build strong two-way relations with social actors, social movements, social communities. That is the way economics can gain its power. Yeah, thank you very much. That's very cool.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation and thinking of the challenges of layers and complex thinking and sensitivities. But I think one of the most important takeaways is not thinking alternatives through visions of hubris, of a kind of black and white dialectic of radical transformation without inner critique of your own position. So thank you very much. Okay, so what we're going to do now, because we are actually late and on time altogether, and I'm conscious of us being able to go upstairs to the next session, which is really important. We will not do question and answer right now. Is that what we're going to do is we can talk for the next 2 days together. We can ask questions during the coffee break. But what we're doing right now is we're going to be moving to the talking circle. So the English language presenters are going to be moving to the talking circles. And the talking circles are an informal session. Every room has one of the themes of the conference that you're a part of. You'll see it in the program. They're all on the 8th floor. So what I encourage you to do is to pick a room or an area that best fits your research topic. Go to that room, introduce yourself, say who you are, where you've come from. When you're presenting, it's a wonderful way for us to get to know each other, and I want to make sure we get the most time for that session. So I'll be at the door if you have any questions about that and to help guide you, but everything will be back on the 8th floor. Now I'm going to hand over to José Luis to give the Spanish language instructions.
Thank you, Philip. Bien, solamente recordarles que ahora no ha habido la sesión de preguntas y respuestas porque vamos de tiempo. Bueno, lo que decía, tenemos ahora a las 10:30 la mesa redonda, que será en la habitación número 6, en la 8ª planta. Hay una cuestión que no viene mucho ahora mismo, pero yo la recuerdo. El acceso al Wi-Fi, al Wi-Fi, en cada una de las habitaciones está puesto un código QR que pueden ver con su teléfono y ahí tienen para poder conectarse. Y en esta está aquí, ahora lo vamos a poner en la puerta principal también, ¿vale? Tendremos entonces la mesa redonda a las 10:30 y luego la sesión plenaria, que será a las 11:25, esa de nuevo sí será aquí en esta sala. ¿De acuerdo? Bien, muchísimas gracias.
Slides for a moment.